Hello. Sending announcements. It should be live. Give me a sec. I'm just gonna post announcements. Post the live stream one. Where's live stream? I'm always blind. I can never find channels on Discord. Where's live streams? Oh, there it is. There we go. Post more announcements online. Hello, we're already getting messages. Give me a second. I'm just gonna finish posting announcements. Post, and there we go. Could be live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Resonance. I'm Froox. Today, unfortunately, we don't have Syra, so I'll be handling the questions myself. But welcome. This is another episode of Resonance. It's essentially kind of like my office hours, and you can ask anything about Resonite, like whatever you want. First, is the audio okay? Can you like hear me fine? Are the audio levels okay? I'm gonna adjust the camera a little bit too. So audio okay? I think it seems to be okay. Thank you. So audio's fine. So we should be able to get started. So welcome again. This is Resonance. It's sort of like my office hours. You can ask anything you want about Resonite, whether it's a technical question, whether it's philosophical, with how platform goes, kind of like personal things. We want to get to know the team a bit more. Pretty much whatever you want to ask, you can ask in chat. Make sure whenever you ask a question, put a question mark at the end. That way it kind of pops in my thing. Let me just show you. Oh, that's my hair. Hold on. I'm just gonna grab the... Ooh. I'm grabbing the wrong things. Oop. I have too many things. There we go. Oop, oop. Good. There we go. See, that's you. And that's the questions. So make sure to put a question mark at the end, and it'll pop on the thing. We also have a bunch of questions that are coming from Discord. They're also in advanced questions. So I'm gonna go through those first, and I'm gonna go to the questions from the chat. So with that, we should be able to get started. I don't know if I'm forgetting anything. Yeah. So let's get started. So I'm also gonna I think I'm gonna freeze the camera too, so it's not floating so much. Let me make a good angle. Actually, hold on. That's fine. I also used one of the creator gem worlds. This is like a pretty cozy one. And I actually contributed to this one. I made a few things like the skybox and I'm clipping through. I made a skybox and the cloud system you can see behind. This is procedurally generated clouds that sort of poof in and then poof out and made kind of cartoony nice. So let me create a camera anchor. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna adjust myself a bit. Okay, so let's get started. Actually, maybe I should move a little bit here. There we go, so that way I have space for the questions. So let's go. So first question that's from Discord. This is from Phoenix. Phoenix is asking, when the splitting is shipped to stable, can we get system-spec guidelines on what kind of a GPU, CPU, and how much memory? Always ideal for running Resonite in desktop mode and for VR mode. It seems like NVIDIA chip might be more stable, for example, but it can be tricky to work out exactly what to get when thinking about building a PC. I want Resonite to work very well. Is X380 chip still important with Net 9? Almost wish there was just a Resonite box I could buy. Or Resonite style MHD, where Resonite is Spatial Computer OS and don't have to worry about the components. So probably not gonna have our own HMD, at least not in the immediate future. But I think this is one of those things where it's kind of good, to source it to the community, because usually when you build like the specs, it's like you try lots of different hardware and see what it runs well on. And we're a small team and we don't really have access to that much like hardware. But with the community, like people try lots of different specs. They can all compare. So I'll probably leave it to that. Ask around the community. Some people some people even like build guides, like what this is good to like run on, and this is like what things like they get. So I would probably say we're not gonna have like one officially, but we're gonna have like one officially, but like I think it's good like to kind of ask around in community and see like what everybody's kind of using and what kind of performance are they getting in different worlds. I do know from some people like the X3D chips are still like working really well, and some people had like interesting result like with core affinity for like assigning different cores like to the main process and to the renderer. But we'll kind of see like how everything kind of shakes up once it's done. The next question is from Shadow X, is asking, every version number currently begins with beta. Is there a specific goal you have in mind where you plan to drop the beta part? Yeah, it's pretty much like dropping the beta. It means coming out of early access, and I think there should be a video on it, like on our YouTube channel, where I kind of like went through when I went through like a lot of the big things that I want to happen before like we move out of it. Just sort of TLDR. Definitely the splitting performance improvements, like that's one of the big parts. We definitely want to rework some of the UI and adjust like some of the like onboarding, making sure like things are kind of like smooth for users. There are like a few other features, but like overall the minimum for like dropping the beta is it's a big cloud. Overall for like dropping the beta, it's like making sure that like Resonite out of the box is a good experience for new users, and it's pretty smooth, it's stable, it performs reasonably well, it has like easy to use UI. So those would be like the main things. There might be some other stuff that I'm kind of forgetting, but those are the ones that come to the top of my head. The next question is from Tito Ferro. Tito Ferro's asking, have you heard of Spacetime DB? If not, you should check it out. You could get some insights for your netcode that can improve games performance. So I've heard about it. I don't think it's like particularly helpful because it's a very different kind of architecture and very different philosophy, like for how things are kind of approached. It's also like with Resonite, the netcode itself, like based on like the benchmarks, it's not really something affecting the performance that significantly. That's more on the data model side, which relates to the data model. Like it relates to the netcode, but it's also not. So it's so yeah, like I don't think like there are like sufficiently different approaches that like it's hard to like draw parallels or be like like maybe you should do things this way, because it's like it's a little bit like trying to like say you're making I don't know, you're making a plane and you look like you try to look at like a submarine, and there's like surface similarities, both are kind of cabins, very inside of the cabin, but ultimately they're very different things with different design, and like it's not gonna translate between the two. The next question is from Ozzy. Ozzy's asking, even in its early state, has any of the performance tests other users have done surprised you in pre-release? Yes, I actually did. People have been kind of... So, I've been like having an issue. I think it's something more with my machine, and I kind of want to dig into it, but like I've been having some weirdness like with the performance, but like my machine like is running a million things and it's kind of struggling with things. So I think it's not like a representative. And then like when it got released, like there was like somebody who literally got like over 1,000 FPS at one point in the cloud home, not cloud home, the local home. Also, there's like also interesting thing like with the cloud home, people have been like, you know, making the splitting work on Linux. And Sarah's kind of working on it like officially right now. Like he's making kind of PRs, so like, you know, it just works out of the box. But people have also gotten it to work, like not like on a personal area, and he made it work on a phone, on a like ARM phone, where the main process, which is .NET 9, runs natively, and then the render is like running with like emulation. And he opened the Cloud Home, expecting it to crash, and it just worked, and he got 9 FPS on a phone with emulation. So there's like stuff that like I'm like, ooh, it's kind of cool. Like I didn't expect it, like, you know, work that well. So yeah, people have been like seeming to have like getting pretty good results with it. So I'm quite happy to hear, and I hope like it's kind of like, you know, it's gonna hold up like well. But we'll see. It's kind of, the performance also depends, you know, like a lot like what you do. Some things have like, you know, better performance than others, and there's like there's a lot of like different kind of like, you know, aspects to it. So like you're not gonna see the same performance like increase for every single thing, but overall things should be better. And some things are like way better than some others, and you know, there's gonna be more stuff in the future, but overall like it seems to be quite positive. Let's see what's next. So Ozzy's asking, combo question, what post-splitting task interests you most, if any? So actually I have to look. So I have a board, if you haven't seen it, there's like a board where you can see all the tasks for splitting. They're like logged on GitHub. Let me just open it up. Shall see if I can also drop a link in the chat. Let me open the Twitch, Resonite up. So if you wanna look along, and I'm getting an ad at my own stream, let me just post this in here. This is the link. So there's a number of things like posters. So there's like a few, like for example, you're in the previous scene state on main process hitch. That's gonna be, I think this one's gonna be interesting. Like that's like if you freeze, like it's just gonna keep rendering more frames, which might be good. Like if you said, for example, watching videos and you get a lag spike, the video is gonna continue. So like your avatar is gonna be frozen, but it'll render more frames. Concurrent. Let's see. Switch to numerics. There's like some stuff that like I'm interested. Like for example, one thing considering switching the render to IL to C++, and I'm kind of curious how much will that help. Will that help at all? Then garbage collectors, smoothing out, native process Linux. That's everything. Actually, that should be in the progress corner, but reboot render when it crashes. That's all. That one. Like I'm looking forward to. Like I feel like we're gonna be like very unique, like where we can be like we're the only application that can withstand a Unity crash, and like I'm kind of curious how it's gonna feel like, you know, like a crash, and everything goes away and then it just pops back in, and like what is that feeling gonna be like, you know, like because right now like if you crash you're just kind of out of the world and you have to rejoin and it kind of like miss out on a bunch of stuff. So that might be gonna be interesting. There's okay, so like I would say probably out of these, this one. However, there's like one thing that's sort of gonna be enabled by the splitting, but it's like a bigger feature that I wanted to do for a long while, and it's ability to use Resonite as an overlay so you can actually open your dash and use a lot of the functionality over other applications. So you could, like, you know, be, for example, in VR shit, you could be playing Minecraft, the Vivecraft mod. We can be playing whatever VR game you want. And you can have like access to your Resonite dash, so you could, like, you know, message people. You could spawn things in an overall layer, so you can have, like, you know, sort of this augmented reality layer over like other ones, other applications, and we could provide like SDKs and like other things, so you could actually like have tighter integration. Like, say for example, you know, we have like a Minecraft mod where like you're in Minecraft and like in your contacts people will see you like you're in this Minecraft world, And, you know, maybe they can even see, and maybe you can even send them invite, and it's gonna make the mod just like, you know, be like, okay, I'm on the server with this IP, and if you click the invite, it's gonna like, you know, make their Minecraft instance connect to the right one. And then you can like, you know, even see other people, and you could like, you know, you want to be in Minecraft world, spawn a Resonite, like, you know, spawn a video in over a layer and watch it in your Minecraft world. You could do that. And that, like, I think that's gonna be like could be like one of the kind of coolest things. But it's like technically not like a post-splitting task. Like I would like decided to prioritize it, but it's like one I really, really want to work on, because I think it's gonna be like super cool, and it's gonna be like, you know, I don't want to say the word metaverse because it kind of got tainted, but kind of like, you know, the metaverse, like in the before the word got tainted, like, you know, by Meta. And I will say like that one's like on my mind a lot. Ooh, another big cloud. Next question's from BD_. Let's see, let's position this here. BD_ asking, are you planning on taking a break post-splitting before starting on the next big thing? Planning is hard. I mean, I would kind of like to like slow things down a bit, but like, you know, the question is, am I gonna be able to? Because usually like, sometimes it feels like, you know, issues and things like it's like liquid, like, you know, like if you try to like carve out a little like, you know, hole, you know, of like freedom, the task will just go and it just fills it out, like, you know, the same way like you take like water. Oh, I didn't know that wasn't here. The same way like, you know, water, you pour it and it's gonna find every little crevice. So things rarely, you know, things rarely kind of slow down, and there's always like a million other things. And even now, like, it feels like there's so many stuff that's being piled, like where a lot of the conversations and things we're having is like, it's like, oh, like post-splitting this, post-splitting that, post-splitting that, after splitting do this, after splitting to do that, after splitting to do that. And it's just like, even knowing like, you know, that like once this is finished, there's already like a pile of stuff waiting. I don't know, so we'll see. And it's kind of hard because, you know, like it comes like with just being like responsible for the business and making sure like, you know, we kind of keep going, and things that need to be done need to be done. Next question is from Mintshock. Mintshock's asking response on the last Froox office hours, the topic of social media posting. If I understand correctly, there are plans to make in-platform social media system where you can share stuff from Resonite to other Resonite users. Would it be possible to build that service upon a service like Mastodon, so like having separate instance that stores all Resonite posts and makes those available both inside Resonite and through existing clients? So I don't think we probably build it on Mastodon. We probably have integrations with Mastodon, but like the idea for that one is have it built around our own systems, because that gives us a really tight integration. And I think the tight integration is like, you know, where like the huge benefit lies, because we already have kind of systems, and then having like multiple systems that kind of one does like one part and the other one does the other part, and like not as well integrated, like it doesn't kind of mesh a lot with our philosophy and with things we want to do. So it's better to kind of have like things where the system does exactly what we need it to, and then we have it like you know, sort of IO, like input output with other systems. So it's probably gonna like, you know, take that kind of form. Next question is from also from Mintshock. Position it right. Mintshock is asking, and another one. For context, I'm currently working on sequencing timeline animation system with Resonite using spatial variables. By the way, huge props, they are awesome. Yay. Yeah, like spatial variables are like one of those things I wanted to do for so long, like because I was like, they're gotta be like really powerful, and it's not that complicated to add as well. Similar for officially planned system, can you imagine time where user creations reach level of sophistication the development team essentially wouldn't have much to do except maybe upkeep? So I don't think we'll ever get to the point where we're doing just upkeep. But we do want to, like, you know, make tools where people can make as many systems as possible. And, you know, if there's a system missing in Resonite, we want you to have tools to build your own, or maybe even, like, if you don't like the system, maybe it doesn't fit your needs, you know, whatever it is, we want you to have ability to, like, you know, build your own, build alternatives. That said, I think there's a lot of cases where there's benefit to us having an official system for something, because usually we can make those, like, very well integrated with all the tooling, and having sort of, like, you know, standard official system, it sort of makes it like this, like, nucleation point where, like, a lot of stuff the community builds is going to be built around that system, because they know, like, you know, this is the one official system, so they can rely on it, be, like, accessible everywhere. It can be rely on it being maintained, and, like, you know, like, because, like, if you have, like, lots of kind of community systems, sometimes, like, it's hard to, like, sort of get consensus, you know, which one to use. And some people use this one, some people use that one, and they have, like, a bunch of stuff that's, like, you know, not mutually compatible with each other, which is, like, fine, because, like, you know, we want you to be able to build your own systems, but it does, like, from what I noticed, it does lead to, like, certain level of fragmentation. And us making official systems that can help reduce some of that fragmentation. And it can make it more, like, you know, where if you're building your own system, you know, we have a much stronger reason to do it. Like, the reason is not that it doesn't exist. The reason is, like, you know, you need it to be designed differently from the official one, where the official one doesn't fit your needs. So you have, like, much more, you know, sophisticated kind of reason for building your own system, rather than just, you know, the system doesn't exist, so I'm making my own. So yeah, like, there's also a bunch of thoughts, like, you know, relating to, like, because last Resonance I could ask, you know, is Resonite ever gonna be finished? And there's, like, a video on it on the YouTube, so if you want to watch that one, that also has a bunch of thoughts, like, they're sort of related to this. Let's see what's next. Next question is also from Tito Ferrer. Tito Ferrer's asking, is there a plan to make reporting easier, intuitive, and easily accessible in-game? It'd be rich if every time someone says I crashed and not reporting it, funnily enough, people saying I'll report it later are likely to forget about it. My first experience of reporting a bug was a bit confusing, then not being able to explain it properly and then get credited. Someone was able to help and they got credit instead. Is that a skill issue? Yes, there's many more where it came from. Then again, is there a plan to make reporting easier, intuitive, or easily accessible in-game? So our goal is to have, like, reporting accessible in-game eventually. So you can, like, you know, just go make, like, a report, and you know, and it's gonna make things easier in some ways, because, like, for example, we can auto include logs that, you know, just get uploaded to, like, our server. We can auto, like, you know, if you have a replication item, say, like, you know, this thing is, just as an example, say, like, this thing is causing issue, it just be like drop, and, you know, it makes sure it gets uploaded. Or you say, like, I have issue in this world that I'm in, and, like, you know, we're just gonna include information, so that should simplify the reporting process. That said, so there's one aspect of the reporting where, like, it's pretty much on the skill of the reporter, you know, to accurately kind of describe the issue. And there's, you know, something that we can't really fix, you know, it's not a technical problem. That's more like, you know, people knowing, people are, like, you know, like, some people are better kind of reporting things and describing things than others, and I don't think there's much, like, we can do, like, because we do have, like, guidelines which, you know, try to explain this is how we prioritize things. This is thank you Moonbase for the subscription. Yeah, I can actually do this. Anyway, what was I saying? We have the guidelines, but, like, a lot of people kind of skim them or don't even read them, and then, like, we get, like, you know, reports that, like, are hard for us to handle and they're hard for us to understand. And sometimes it can be, depending on what the issue is, sometimes it can be, like, difficult to be, like, you know, understanding what the actual problem is, because when you do report something, you know, like, you know what the problem is kind of in your head, but it can be hard to like, make someone else like, have the same kind of like understanding of what's happening. And I don't think that's something like, fixable. And there's like one thing I'm a little bit worried about is like once we do have it in-game reporting, we might get more of that. Like, we get like more reports that are kind of like, hard to handle, that can be hard to understand for us. Because like by lowering, like, if we lower the bar, we get like more reports, and then like we still need to triage them. And if we get like, a lot more of them, it means like, we can spend less time on each one, trying to understand it, and we also like lower like quality. It creates like the situation where like, we're flooded with reports and we're not able to kind of process them. So I do wonder if there's gonna be, some kind of like negative effects of that. But some of the stuff, like, for example, the logs, that will help. Just having included like crash logs. If you say, like, we can even detect, the user has crashed, just auto upload the crash logs. So some of the stuff can be, done pretty automatically. And that will help in some ways, but depending on what the issue is, like, some things, like, they're essentially not something we can fix on a technical level. Like, no amount of tooling is gonna make it, so people kind of follow the proper like reporting guidelines and make sure to include like the information like correctly. The only thing that can be done is with that is, on the side of the user, like read through our guidelines, try to understand, like how to make good reports, try to understand how we prioritize. We have like a big like write-up on it, where we kind of describe like, how do we prioritize issues. And the only thing we can do is, encourage people to do that more. But I don't know if there's like, anything on technical level. So a lot of kind of basic stuff, the log stuff, like that helps because like, we can just auto collect that, like with the report, like if we just check a checkbox, like include my log. But then like the stuff like, actual description of things, that's a little bit harder. So we'll see. Yeah, it happens, and it's like, stuff like we deal with, and we'll deal with it as we kind of come. But yeah, like we will have like in-game system eventually. Like we do want to like, get more reports, like some more stuff gets caught, and make it kind of easier, like, quicker to report, because there's some things that end up like being reported. But we'd also like worry about like, the flip side of it, like, because it is a double-edged sword. And if we get like overwhelmed, like, by having lots of issues that like are hard to parse, I'm like a little bit concerned what is that gonna do to our ability to sort through the issues and solve them. Because you can also see that, for example, like with the Minecraft like issue tracker, there's so many reports where like they're just like they're missing a lot of like core information, and they don't even bother like engaging with them. And I wonder, like, if we'll have to do the same. We'll just be like this report is like we can't really do anything with this. And and you won't have time to like also be like, spend time replying to every single one. Can you please include this? Can you please include that? Can you please include that? Because it takes time to like, have those responses. And to like try to understand like what you might need for this one. It also like you don't know if you're even going to get a response, because we already get that with GitHub where sometimes people report something and we're like we don't understand this, and then like we don't really get the response back. But in a lot of cases we do. So but the question is, with this kind of system, are we gonna get one? But maybe it was like integrated, and the user like, we make a message pop up, be like, please reply to this thing, we need more information, maybe they'll help. So it's gonna be like, I think it's like there's gonna be like, novel kind of challenges we'll have to deal with that kind of system. But yes, eventually we will have the system, sort of like in game, make it like more accessible, and whatever kind of issues like arise, like we'll see what we can do like to deal with those. But that's kind of like my thinking on it. And my only like worry is that like that people will have expectation that like it makes it more likely for their reports to be addressed, and that it can like not, that they will not have to follow the guidelines we ask them to follow on the GitHub, where with it being more accessible, we'll need them to follow them like that much more to be able to handle the larger volume of the reports. Because like the more reports there are, the less higher we have to spend on them, and the higher does the quality need to be. So it's kind of almost feels like a potentially paradox, but like overall, there's potentially things we could do, like maybe having a system where we kind of say like rate the reports and be like this like this needs this needs that, like maybe we can like link the guidelines. We'll see. And I don't want to ramble on this much longer. The next question is from Safi. Safi's asking, almost every time introduced showed someone Resonite, they were turned off by how the movement IK looked, especially when using full body tracking. Is there a time frame when the work on the IK system continues? We don't do time frames, like things like things are hard to predict, like with like this level of complexity of development, so like we cannot really give you specific time frames. The only thing we can say is like I'm gonna say, because I use full body myself, it's one of the like high priority things. If if this is something that's important to you, I recommend upvoting the GitHub issue for the new IK, because that like signals to us this is a really important issue that we need to prioritize sooner than later. And I do think I want to like prioritize this like sooner than later, but also like if it's fighting with other things that need to be prioritized sooner than later, which is stuff like the UI, because that's another thing that people are turned off by, and we need to figure out like what is going to be more impactful. Is it going to be more impactful if we address some of the UI now, or is it going to be more impactful with the IK, or is it going to be more impactful for us if we, for example, prioritize something like the molecule, which is going to help us on the development side, because now it's even creating some issues where right now I'm, for example, working on the splitting, and I'm just gonna laser focused on it, and there's a bunch of like PRs, and like it's kind of hard for me to make normal builds because I have to like switch out everything to make a build. Once we have like molecule, that like makes some of the stuff easier, because if team members make PRs for features, those can just become automatically available as pre-release builds. We can have a bunch of completely separate pre-releases, and they can start doing community testing on those, and that's gonna help reduce some of the workload for like having to manually verify and review the code, and it's gonna make it where we can just more like rubber stamp it. And there's still gonna be like a review, but like at least like more confidence this is not like causing any breaking changes. So there's a bunch of things that are kind of like being balanced, and it's pretty high up there, but there's also like other things that are high up there. Another thing, like we can also be like, maybe it's going to be more impactful if we do stuff like collections for protoflags, because that's going to open up so many possibilities for creators, and they're going to start building cool content. So there's a lot, and I do myself want the IK to be like reworked, but I can't like also want the UI to be like reworked. I want so many things at once, and it is hard. Next question is from Abysmal. Abysmal's asking, are there any plans, or is it even possible to get rid of the UI and frame rate lockup when loading a new world? Is it possible to separate UI rendering and your POV camera movement into something like SteamVR home overlay that isn't affected by loading things? So that's not really with like the SteamVR overlay. You can't really separate that like that, but what we can do is like do as much of the work as possible on a separate thread and then just switch to it. And there are some changes I would like to make, like to how the worlds are being updated, so we can like both run the worlds updates in parallel, and also have them like like if the world isn't currently focused and rendering, have the world be updated asynchronously, so it doesn't you know, it doesn't need to like lock the entire like frame rate, and that will help, you know, with like a lot of these things, because it can like process all the world like in background, and once everything is ready and stable, then it like switches back into like, you know, the sync, like sort of synchronous mode, where it can start like rendering stuff and sending stuff to the renderer. So there are things that can definitely be done. Next question is from Chu. Let me make this bigger. Chu's asking, I know you talked about looking for a new rendering engine. Have you... Sorry, this is kind of big, so I don't know where to position it without blocking the camera. Have you looked at Ogre Next at all? Forward cluster, Vulkan render target, cross-platform rendering only, and embeddable. No weird force custom surface shader language like Filament, mature development, and already even stereoscopic VR rendering. Only thing I can see be potential concern is that it's currently OpenVR only. It doesn't have OpenXR support yet, but it seems to have an enterprise downstream consumer using it. Honestly impressive looking, contracted XR simulator work, so it's not hobbyist only. So this sounds interesting. We haven't I haven't really done super much in-depth like scouting for like renderers yet. So it's possible. This seems like a good like consideration. There's definitely stuff like we would need to know is like what is, you know, what's the level of like feature parity, because, you know, we need stuff like even like low level, like, you know, well, lower level, like, you know, how does the lighting system work, like, you know, like does it like, can, for example, point lights have shadows, you know, on them, can direction lights have shadows, does it support reflection probes, stuff like that. So the OpenXR, that's potentially like concern, because, like, you know, like what, how's it gonna, you know, are you planning to switch to it? Like, is there any active like work going towards that? Like, you know, that's another one. The other part would be, you know, with the stability, like having the downstream clients, that's a big one, but also like still there's a worry. What if the component just, you know, goes under? What if like they're not interested? What if they switch and the project ends up being abandoned? Oh my god, thank you so much, BD_, for the gifts. For the tiers, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gifted subscriptions. Thank you so much. But yeah, like going under, there's a bunch of considerations. Like what I think I will do at some point, we'll just compile the list of them. Be like, you know, these are the pros, these are the cons. You know, because, for example, one thing I'd be kind of curious with this one is how much community involvement there is. Is this like, you know, like, is this very active, like with community, or is this like mostly driven by that one company? So we'll see. But thank you. Like this is good to have, like, you know, kind of more considerations. Let's see. I think we got to kind of put things behind the camera, so I don't know. Yeah, there's 2 more questions after this one from Discord. So the next one's from Mint Shock. Mint Shock is asking, how is it handled if you drive the value of dynamic variable from 2 different places? How does Resonite decide what drive takes priority? So it's not, you can't do that. One of the constraints of drives is you can, like, there can only be one drive for particle value. So like if you try to drive, you know, something that's already driven and to try to drive it, either, you know, trying to establish the drive will fail, or if you force it, it's gonna break the other drive. So, but the constraint is at any time there can only be one driving source, and if you force one in, it's gonna break whatever the other one is. Like it's gonna like essentially undrive it. And it's the constraint that like the data model enforces. So there should be actually video. I don't know if it's published yet. There should be video on, like, you know, why this is. Like why can we like derive from multiple sources. I do recommend giving them one watch in case it's published. I'll have to check. The next question is from ShadowX. Shadow is asking, what is the correct terminology in your eyes to refer to builds with the new architecture, split builds, post-splitting builds? I don't think we actually have like proper terminology right now. I mean, you can just, I've been also saying, like, the splitting, it's kind of sort of meme name for it. Like I would say, like I've been calling them like graphical.NET 9 like builds, so maybe that, but like I don't think we have like a super like specific terminology for them. I can call them like, you know, splitting build, .NET 9 graphical client, like I think that works. And let's see, I think that's all of them, with this one being the last one from Discord. So I'll be able to get to the Twitch ones in a sec. BTS underscores asking, now that the pre-release has been out for a bit, how are things going compared to how expected? More issues, fewer on line with expectations. I would say it's roughly kind of with expectations. Like, there's like things, you know, like that aren't super expected, but I've said most of them kind of are issues that like make sense for what has been changed. I haven't seen any issues that would be like curveballs, like big curveballs, that like where I'm like that just doesn't make any sense. Like, why would this be happening? But there's also like issues that even though like they make sense, they end up like being a little bit of a rabbit hole, for some things. So, like, right now, like not super much stuff kind of stands out. So like I feel like it's kind of going like okay, and we're kind of like sorting through the issues. So yeah, the thing is, like, you know, it's hard to have like expectations because you don't know like what you're gonna get. But like there's like nothing that would be like too surprising that I can like think of. I guess the one that like is more complicated was the Linux, like, you know, with like not working with Proton, because there's like a lot of like really weird issues with that one that a lot of people had to kind of like look into. And that one, that's the one. Actually, that one feels like it's more problematic than I thought it would be, because I thought like Proton would just kind of handle things, but there's a lot of kind of like complications there. Fortunately, Sarah's been kind of like working on those, and along like, you know, a lot of people in the community have been kind of figuring how to get it working. So I think we'll get that one sorted. But yeah, otherwise like things like one thing that actually that's kind of nice is like a lot of the reports that people have made, even though they were like different reports and like different kind of like seemingly different issues, they were actually the same bug. So I would fix one bug and then be like, okay, that's like that fixes 5 of these issues, and fix another bug and I'm like, oh, this fixes 4 of these issues. So it's that's parsing kind of nice, because like it makes it easier to clear a bunch of issues, you know, at the same time. So with that, we've got all of the Discord questions out of the way, which means we can get into the ones from the Twitch chat. So again, if you're like joining, if you wanna, there's a lot of questions, so I might speed through some of these. Actually, hold on, let me check. There's a bunch. Actually, it's not that many so far. If you want to ask any questions, make sure to put a question mark in it in the chat. That way it kind of pops on this thing over here. And, you know, make sure I don't miss it, because I don't watch every single message in the chat. So let's get started. So the first one, it's not quite a question, but it's a good start. Bitcoin agents saying, "Heyo, hello." Ooh, and we got, I think I missed this. We got a splitting cheer from Jack the Fox Daughter. Thank you for the bits. And we got the Schnopit. So, and we also got a Schnopit from the Redneco and also from Ace on Twitch. No, actually, no, I misread that. That's TyponX. I actually started compiling my Schnoppits. I have a list now, so I don't have to, like, you know, think of something over the top of my head. I might pick like a shorter one. I'm gonna pick a shorter one because I've already spent like there was a lot of Discord questions. There's some like bigger questions, so I don't want to like do a long Schnoppit. So one of my Schnoppits is when people assume that something is done by design. Like, for example, it's going to be some undesirable behavior, there's going to be some kind of bug, you know, or something that just kind of works in a really weird way, and people will be like, you know, like, those are like weird like design decisions. And like, to me that's kind of like a bit annoying, because like, not like, people sometimes like, it's kind of like assuming like we make things bad on purpose, and that's kind of weird. And a lot of things that, like, you know, are like weird, like, oftentimes they're not by design, they're, you know, sort of consequences of like some other things, but like they were not designed to be that way. It's just, you know, kind of how the dice has rolled on some things, you know, it's like how things kind of settle down, or maybe it's some bug, or maybe it's a system that we didn't have time to complete yet. And that actually is one that kind of happens a lot. It's like, you know, where people kind of assume like it's that way because it's been designed that way, and a lot of the times it's literally like we haven't had time to like finish this part of the system yet to actually make it, like, you know, work well and be polished and have all the features it needs. So sometimes, you know, there's stuff like workarounds that you have to use because, you know, we don't have time. So if you're like seeing like something weird, unless we say it's by design, like, I would kind of ask, you know, people don't assume it's by design. And if somebody says, like, you know, it's like weird design, don't assume it is like by design, like, you know, like, unless we actually say that. Because it kind of makes things a bit weird, and it kind of feels like, you know, being like we're assuming like we make things, like, you know, bad on purpose, and just kind of So that's my Schnopit for the stream. I'm gonna cross it out from this. I have some bigger ones for some other times. Oh my god, I don't know where the strike through is. Where's the strike through in this format? Text, strike through, there we go. We also got TyponX, and we also got PD_TyponX for .NET 9. I'm gonna combine these two, and I'm just gonna do it about the .NET 9. So TyponX, that's like, you know, something like that's super cool about .NET 9. I wonder what it would be. I have like one that I really like, but it's not even specific to .NET 9, because like I have like one about spans. You know what? I'm gonna shoehorn it into this. It's kind of related. One of the cool things with the splitting, which is kind of related to .NET 9, is in C#, like a while back, they introduced this struct called span. And what the span does, it lets you access, like, you know, raw memory without worrying where that memory exists. And that memory can be, you know, it can be managed memory, you know, managed by the common language runtime. It can be native memory. It can be shared memory. You know, like that we're like using for the IPC mechanism. It just kind of like, you know, abstracts it away, and it's super performant. It also lets you reinterpret that memory, so you can, like, you know, take this data type and reinterpret as a different one and just work with it as a different data type. And it's super fast, like, if you know, like, what you're doing with it. It's also, like, hard to shoot yourself in the foot with it, the way it's designed. So it's, like, it's pretty safe, but also very powerful. Like, it kind of lets you do stuff that, like, you could do with, you know, raw pointers and languages like C and C++, but in a sort of safe way. And when I designed, you know, Photon Dust, our own like particle system, I've designed it in a way, like, because I knew we're gonna do the splitting, and the Photon Dust was in preparation for the splitting. So I designed where all the simulation results, like all the final states, they're actually held in just, like, you know, a raw chunk of memory, like a buffer. And for initial implementation, it was just a byte array, but all the modules, all the simulator modules, were accessing that through spans. And then for splitting, I needed to move it from, like, managed memory to the shared memory, so, like, the simulation results are actually accessible over shared memory on the renderer side. And all I had to do is just, like, add, like, the allocator that like allocates, you know, the memory chunk to the system. So it can be like, I need like this many bytes, and it just adjusts like, you know, how the span is accessed, and that's it. And it just worked. Like it literally just made it work across, you know, separate process, and I didn't have to like modify like much of photon dust to make it work. And it's super cool because like it was only possible thanks to spans. That like, you know, most of the code, like it doesn't care that like the data exists in shared memory instead of like, you know, C# array, and that made things so much nicer. And like, you know, we just get like the performance benefit of .NET, like, you know, without too much hassle for that specific part. So I would say that's the one I'm gonna say for now. And it's like, I really like spans is like one of the best features like from C#. Next one here from Kra Blades is asking, hello Yellow Duck Man, how are you feeling today? I'm tired. Been kind of started working things. Next one is from Ace on Twitch. Ace on Twitch is asking, do you see any future projects bigger and more complex than performance optimizations? I'm not sure. It kind of depends what you count, because the current performance optimizations, the splitting, it's been huge. It's been like one of the biggest things, but also in part because of all the preparatory work, because we need to do the type system, you know, like, so then moving the headless to .NET 9, then we had to like, you know, had to like rework photon dust, make our own particle system, have to make our own audio system, and then like, you know, only then like able to do the actual splitting. So it had a lot of like very complex preparatory work. So if you take that whole, that probably has been like one of the most, like it has been the most complex like engineering project like on this so far. And right now I don't know of any specific projects which would have like, you know, a lot of big predefined prerequisites like that. There's definitely like, you know, big tasks that are like ahead, but I can't like immediately think of any that would like involve, because the split, to be able to get to splitting, we actually had to do a bunch of big projects that are big projects on their own that have to be done as prerequisites. And there's like projects in the future that are also like big tasks, but I don't think many of them have like big prerequisites like this. So if you count like the whole, I can't think of any, but like, you know, things can change, something can come up, but we'll see how things go. Like something will eventually come up. Yeah, I can't think of like anything right now. Like I do, maybe one that's gonna be a big one could be WebAssembly support, because there's a lot of like, you know, in terms of API, but also like I don't think that would still be like as big as this, because this, like, that's also like, you know, it's a big project on its own, but it doesn't have that many prerequisites to do. So yeah, we'll see if something comes up. Like I don't see projects that like as a whole would be like this big, but there's definitely projects that like if you took any individual part, there's definitely projects that would be like, actually wait, one would be probably the render switch, because making sure there's like a lot of stuff with that one. So like I do think the render switch, that might be a big one, because that does involve a lot of things. Like, you know, it's like one, figuring out which render to use, but then also like bringing it to feature parity, making sure stuff like works, and then like all the shaders will have to be pretty much reworked. A lot of the behaviors will have to like make sure to be like reworked. So it's like, and then we have to like, you know, build stuff like on that, but those can be like separate projects. Like, you know, once we want to add like custom shader support, that's a project of its own, making sure, you know, that's designed to be long-term stable. So there's a bunch of things, but also could be considered separate. So like, we'll see. We'll see that. Sometimes like you don't know, like, you know, how big some of these things are until you actually get to them, because, you know, that's where you discover like, oh, like I need to do this, I need to do that, and once you kind of start taking it apart and seeing to things, like, you know, that's when you learn like of some of the complexities kind of involved. Next question's from the Redneko. Redneko's asking, hey Froox, what's your favorite book series? For book series, I would say The Expanse. Like all the 9 books and like a bunch of the novellas, especially the last 3 books. Like those are like excellent. It's like when stuff gets like super alien. If you've also seen the TV show, like the TV show's excellent. I recommend watching it. And the books are also like great. There's some actually differences between the books and the shows, but like overall the story is the same. And what I really like about that is like it feels very realistic. Like, it's sci-fi, but also like stuff that happens feels like, this is potentially natural progression, of humanity. Like you kind of like, this kind of makes sense. Like I can see this being real. You don't like, you don't like a lot of like sci-fis that tend to feel like, very, I don't know, so like cartoonish almost, like, it's like ships and shooting lasers and so on, but like The Expanse, it feels a lot more grounded. But then there's like, but that's until like, some of the alien stuff starts happening, but even the alien stuff is like properly alien. Like it makes a lot of other series feel like, like that aliens like are just like, green humans with antennas. Like, because the stuff in Expanse is like alien, like on very fundamental level, and I don't want to say too much because I don't want to spoil it, but it gets really weird, but also in a way that sort of kind of makes sense. Like we're like I can see this being real. So that's a really good series. Next question is from Baplar. On a scale from yippee to awe, how are you feeling about the progress on splitting on personal level? I'm feeling I'm tired, but there's like still a bunch of stuff to do, so chewing through it. Next question's from Ace on Twitch. How big of a performance impact do you see Resonite getting after Beppo gets updated and multi-threaded? It's hard to say. I think it's gonna be a bit. It is also gonna depend like a lot like on specific world you're in, because depending on the workload, there can be different amount of workload being put on Beppo physics versus on, other stuff. So in worlds like where there's like lots of colliders, lots of stuff kind of like moving and so on, that's definitely probably gonna see like much bigger impacts. But there's also like stuff that's indirect, like we're using Beppo's acceleration structures for a bunch of things. Like we're using them for dynamic bones. That's using the simulation itself is not using Beppo, but like to figure out where the colliders are. That's using Beppo's acceleration structure. Same with spatial variables. Same, with like, for example, haptics and stuff. So if there's like improvements for that in performance, that can have positive effects. But it's one of those things is, like, until we do it, it's kind of hard to speculate about it because like these interactions tend to be very complex. So we'll see. It's good to update it like anyways because like it should provide improvement like overall. It's also gonna there's like bug fixes in it, and it's just good like in general to be like with the latest version. Some of the like improvements might not even be like something that you would necessarily notice because like for example the affect stuff like if you have lots of rigid bodies and also rigid body simulation, and like that's something you can't really do like unless you use the character controller. So with those cases, if we didn't update Beppo and like then implement the rigid body physics, that might be slower than if we do upgrade. But like we're probably gonna upgrade Beppo, like very very likely gonna upgrade Beppo physics before we implement full rigid body. So once we get a rigid body, that's gonna be faster than it would have been otherwise because that's where a lot of the improvements are. So there's like effects like that where it's like good to have it upgraded. So. But we'll see. We'll see. This is within discussion. They're just asking Orion to share stuff. Also, hello, Orion. Baplar, which team member is responsible for editing, uploading Resonance clips to YouTube channel? That's me. I usually do it because like I know like what I talked about, and I kind of have like in my head like okay this one would make a good clip, this one would make a good clip. It's actually it's also very quick for me to just be like, I have the file on my PC already. Let me make sure. Yeah, I have like the file on my PC. Actually, let me double check my disk space. I forgot to do that at the beginning. Oh wait, it's the phone. Oh, I got 100 gigs free, so that's fine. Yeah, like I just do it like it's very quick to do. So like, it's one of those things where people are like, oh, just like have like somebody on the team to do it, but then I have to worry about like, okay, I need to make sure they get the file. I need to tell them this would make a good clip. This would make a good clip. And at the time like it takes to do all of that, I can just clip it out myself because like it's literally I just find beginning and clip out, done. I don't do like any little complex or anything on those. So it's just kind of easier that way. It kind of ends up like being faster. And usually like, what I was gonna say. Yeah, usually like I just kind of clip it out. Oh, I remember one thing that made it easier is like once I started doing the thing where I pull these out, like I can just literally scrap the timeline and be like, okay, like I pulled out this question beginning, find like where I make it go away, clip there, done. It's very quick process. I also got a subscription from Moonbase, thank you. And the one from BD underscore, we got to that part, but actually, wait, there's a question first. Moonbase asking, just for clarification, will Molecule also be usable in-game for stuff like asset versioning and stuff? Yes, that's the plan. The general goal like with anything in Resonite is make systems that are very, very flexible, that can be used for lots of different stuff, and generally can be used, by you, the community, as well. So having Molecule, it solves like certain set of problems, which is versioning stuff like compatibility, kind of like where you can do like minor and major versions, breaking changes versions, resolving dependencies. When it does all of that stuff, that's something that's not useful just for us, like for the engine itself, but it's also useful for stuff you build in game. So the way I want us to build it is make it so it can be used for all those different scenarios. Once we have protoflags, nested nodes, we need like a package system, so it can like be like, okay, I need like my protoflags to reference package, this and that, for doing this and that, or version this, and then have like a system that resolves it. Why not use Molecule? Like we already have like system that solves like a lot of these problems. Use that, and we get like bigger bang for the for the time we put into it. And it's kind of the general philosophy of like Resonite development. And also BD underscore, thank you. Like I'm gonna pull these out. There's a lot of gifted ones. Make sure you thank the BD underscore too. If you're one of these. Thank you. Zip, 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 zip. Look at the sort through these. Oops, that's not the one. Ace on Twitch is asking, are you excited for the help tab and its progress so far? Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Like the team that I've been kind of working on it for a while, and it's like like I think it's gonna help like a lot of people. So it's like just having the information accessible right on the tab. We'll see how like people end up interacting with it, because like there's always part of the development where you're like this should help, this should like work out this way, but then like another thing is how do people actually interact with it. But overall I think it's gonna help, because like it also becomes a thing we can direct people to. But even just having help on the tab, I think that's gonna make it more easier for people to just get help with stuff. Like they'll be lost and they'll be like, okay, there's a big question mark button, I'm gonna click that, and then it's gonna guide you through things. So I think overall it's gonna be like big help, and hopefully like that'll kind of ease like people's like onboarding. Next question, I was just gonna repeat again, like our team have been like doing a really good job on it. Next question is from Helix. Given that you are kind of just actually making the M word, it's the M word now, way better than my Zuckerberg ever could. Do you see a future where Resonite is basically full VR-based operating system? I'd love to have a dedicated rig just for Resonite, like in Ready Player One. I mean, it's kind of like part of the philosophy, is, you know, like Resonite's kind of like operating system. You can do anything in here. You know, you can just socialize, but it's more than just socialization. You can work, you can, like, you know, have fun, you can build things, you can use it for your, you know, job, you can use it, like, say you want to build, you like producing music. Once we have, like, you know, the stuff for like doing audio DSP, you can build your virtual music studio, invite friends over, you know, jam together, make music together. Once we have in-game, like, the vertex editing, you can use it as a modeling tool, and you can use it as a collaborative one too. It's gonna be lots of different things, you know, like if you're a programmer, you can make modules, so, like, you know, protoflags, once we have WebAssembly, and can help empower other people, like, you know, say, even with combination, like with WebAssembly, maybe you make a module that, like, is a super cool audio filter, and, you know, you publish it in Workshop, and then, like, you know, people who make music or make sound effects, they'll just be like, oh, this is a cool filter, and maybe it's free, maybe it's paid, like, you know, but they get it, they put it into their setup and start making music with it. Or you make a module that, like, you know, does some mesh processing, you know, and integrates with the mesh editing system, or you make some tools for that. Like, the goal is, like, you know, to have, like, this universe where you can do almost, like, everything, like, you know, like from you know, if it's like casual, like recreational, or if it's like work or learning things, like, you know, everything sort of like integrated and interfaces with each other. And I think that, like, you know, is like what makes this platform like really powerful, and where like most of the potential kind of lies. And it's kind of like, you know, where like we've been kind of pushing it towards. And there's still a lot of work to do it, but like we've already seen like a lot of the stuff kind of happening, so I feel like it's kind of on its natural way there. And the more stuff we add, you know, I think the more clear it's going to be to more people, you know, that's the kind of application we are building. Because I feel a lot of times people kind of compare it, you know, to stuff like VR chat and so on, and there's like overlap, but also there's a lot of stuff like we're doing, like, you know, that's not even the goal of these other platforms. We're just focused, like, you know, purely mostly on the socialization aspect. But I feel there's like so much more we can be doing with VR, and there's so much more we can be doing with social spaces, because the way I see the social aspect of, you know, this kind of software is that it's just your base layer. And it's more like, you know, what do you build on top of it? What can you do with that? You know, like, it's just, the social layer is just existence, you know, it's like it lets you exist with other people and do stuff with other people. And it's like what kind of tools, what kind of, like, you know, abilities we give you in that space, and how much power we give you over the universe you exist in, because that's also another big part of our philosophy, is giving you as much control over your experience, over, like, you know, this virtual universe that you exist in, as you can have. Because, like, everybody wants, like, you know, has different goals, everybody wants to do something different, but like we feel like you know, the virtual universe shouldn't be something that's, you know, controlled by somebody else, somebody who controls, you know, like your experience, and, like, you know, what can you do in it, but it's something you, like, you know, you should control. Like, you should be in control of, like, your virtual reality and your virtual experience. So that's kind of like, you know, where a lot of the stuff kind of, like, you know, comes together. Like, it's one of the reasons why we have, like, you know, the ability to just edit everything. You can literally just edit your avatar, edit the environment, edit the world. You can change anything about it, and that's part of, like, you know, why Resonite and Froox Engine is designed that way, is to give you that level of control over your experience, to make it, like, you know, a virtual universe that's, like, malleable and under your control. At least, like, you know, within your own kind of, like, you know, sessions and stuff. Like because if you, like, visit somebody else's session, you know, that's their universe, and they kind of take control of that. But also, like, you know, there's, like, ways for those to kind of interact with each other. So yeah, I can definitely, like, you know, see that. Like, it kind of goes, like, you know, along with, like, our vision for this, and we generally are very long-term focused on vision. Oh, thank you, KBR, for your subscription too. Yeah, so it goes along, with our philosophy. PD underscore is asking, what was the cause of float fields being broken on the inspector? So the reason for that was like we're essentially using reflection to kind of access fields, and we have a system that if you have a struct, it deconstructs the struct and lets you access individual elements of it instead of like a generic way. And the problem is there's some like differences in behavior between Mono and .NET 9. And for nullable fields, they're essentially a struct which contains a boolean and it contains the actual value. And the system we have, we will try to deconstruct that and we'll try to access just the value, which works fine on Mono, but it wouldn't work with .NET 9. .NET 9 is like, this is an illegal access. So I had to add like a system that detects once it's nullable, don't try to deconstruct it into like, individual fields, just it has a special handler now. And that fixed the thing. There's like a lot of the bugs were like little things like that, where there's like subtle differences in some of the behaviors like between the runtimes. Next question is from Meeboo. Is open source something your mind is open to at some day when the time is right and project is ready for it? There's a lot of very capable engineers in the community that would love to help, and there are some big open source games now that run business on top of their open source code bases. Most notable would be also, which is again a lot of from its open source community, a lot of baggage with that question. I'm sure you're just curious if you could see yourself going for that at some point. There's actually a video on our YouTube channel where we kind of like go in depth into this question. So I do strongly recommend watching that one, because like I kind of ramble about it for like, I forget how long, like 10-15 minutes, however long. There's a lot of considerations, but it is definitely something that's on our mind, and it's something we want to do. The TLDR of it is like, we definitely want to do it like when we're ready for it, because there's like, a lot of considerations. Like, one is, how do we handle PRs? Do we have like code guidelines? Do we have like style guidelines? Do we have like, general philosophy of how things are designed? Which PRs we accept, which we don't? Do we have bandwidth for handling all the PRs? Because we need to like, we need to make sure we maintain certain code quality. We need to make sure it doesn't, we don't accept like stuff, that would cause us like long-term issues, because we oftentimes like, worry about long-term compatibility and long-term maintainability. So like, we will have certain requirements, and that requires, putting documentation together, and making sure we have like guidelines so people know how to like do things. And then we also have the bandwidth and the training for people who are handling the PRs to actually, make sure like those things are followed. So I definitely see us doing it. I think the way like, we're going to approach it, and actually we've kind of already been kind of approach it like a bit, but is like, sort of doing gradually, where we open source modules. And we're gonna start with ones that are like, easier to handle. That like, if there's like, some kind of contribution that would have like long-term impact, like it's very, very limited in scope. Stuff like, device drivers, stuff like, importers and exporters, because they don't like add new things to the data model, which is like what needs to have the long-term kind of considerations. But yeah, like I remember watching that video. There's like we kind of go like into a bunch of details. There's actually some parts like where we already accept like contributions. For example, the go.resonite.com website, where you can like open like worlds, that actually has a bunch of community contributions, and that's like one example like where we are kind of accepting some, and our community has made some like really cool improvements. So we've already done a little bit, and that's kind of like, probably the model we want to like focus, but doing more is definitely, there's a lot of considerations there. Next question's from Lucas Zero. Thanks for the clarification. I think Minchard meant to ask what happens when you have two dynamic variable components with the same name and drive both of them to be different values. Oh, so it's like dynamic variable. They're gonna clash. Yeah, like that's not like super defined, because like they're essentially like they're gonna try to like whenever like one of them changes, it's gonna try to change the other, but it might not be able to. So it'll probably just be like, you know, fighting for whatever D value is. I would probably recommend not doing that. Check the Fox author is asking, you mentioned that spatial variables were a thing you've been waiting to do for a while, that you knew you wouldn't take too long to implement but with a massive impact. Are there any other planned systems similar to that you've had back in your mind for a while? There's a lot. Let me actually... The thing is, like, there's oftentimes like so many of them that like I don't actually... It's hard for me to remember from the top of my head. I need to look... I need to look at my board. So I have like a bunch like in the Froox Feel Fun Good issues. Let's see. Let's see. What would be like a big one? Well, it kind of also depends like how of a big one. I can't see like it would be like there's like big ones that are gonna have impact. There's a lot of like big features that would have like a big impact, but not like a small. Yeah, I don't have like one on my list that I would consider to be huge impact. There's like one that like I wanted to do is implement proper triangulation algorithm for triangles but there's more of a foundational thing where it's gonna allow to implement lots of new features that are kind of hard right now, but that's not a direct impact. Yeah, not. Yeah, I don't know. Like from the top of my head, like especially combination, like where it would be like very quick implementation and would have like huge impact. I would have to think and go through the other issues for a bit. Like I don't remember one from the top. Actually, one maybe. Maybe like adding like simple support for face tracking in desktop and adding like way to like sort of like have auto like pose your avatar, because like you could start using Resonite for sort of like VTubing as a sort of like VTubing tool. So I think that could be one that like is not that big of a work, but could open up like a use case that like you can't really do easily right now, but that could have like opens a whole category of like uses that is not possible right now. So maybe that. Next, thank you for the raid. It's from it's kind of hard to read. Keiko Shard, thank you for the raid. Next question is from Orion Moonclaw. Orion's asking, I'm gonna be working on this next for my Godot renderer TM. So this should be helpful. Could you give a quick overview of how mesh uploads work post-splittering? It kind of works the same. It's just gonna proceed over like shared memory. There's like two parts of it. Like one is like the submission, which describes the structure of the mesh, which is like the vertex layout, format of index buffer, any submeshes that are defined, and then it's like a big buffer of the actual data, which contains the vertex streams, the index buffer streams, and blend shape canal streams. So that's kind of the main thing. And as part of the reason like why the mesh upload was reworked is so it can work over IPC very easily, where it just it submits like all the data instead of like being tons of tiny buffers and classes and so on. It's submitted like as like this bulk data that's just byte buffer, or now like shared memory buffer, and then like a bit of like information that's also like just collection of structs that describes the layout of it. Next question is from OZ. It's a long one. There are few renderable components that are not implemented yet, but even in the base builds, they have some Unity functionality that doesn't work. For example, crossfading with the LOD component and bleed the display, allowing another Unity window. Will this be fixed with their implementation? I would understand focusing on just making it work how it did before. Depends. If the fix is easy enough to do, like while working, it's probably gonna get fixed. But if it's like more involved, I'm probably not gonna like fix it during the time just to kind of keep it quicker. The crossfading, that's probably not gonna work at all because I don't think that's a feature that's like fully implemented. It requires like shader support, like for it to actually function. But yeah, usually depends, how complicated the fix is. If it's something that can be done just by reworking it, then usually I do it. But if it's bigger, then I usually just keep it the way it is. Next question is from Dusty Sprinkles. Someone might have already asked this, because I wasn't watching chat, but about difficulties knowing breaking points for new users. Have you thought more about adding metrics collection to Resonite? After there might be enough goodwill post-splitting, it could be worthwhile, but at the same time, I could see it being risky and understand if you don't want to. Yeah, it's one of those tricky things, because like people, like, one of the things is like we don't really collect much data. It's just kind of like, very... pretty much like don't collect it depends on how you define the data. Like we don't collect any like sort of metrics like that. Like that's like user kind of specific or user behavior. It's just based stuff like for like account to make that work. And I feel like we do that, we probably need to be like, we're adding this. We make very clear what this information is being collected. And then like we give people like probably option to opt out, because like it's one of those things where I don't think opt-in really works well, because like people will just ignore it and not opt in, and then we get either very little and or very skewed data, which kind of like makes it not that useful. But like if you're like, okay, like we like this is on by default, but like you have the opportunity to turn it off right now, maybe that'll work. But like we'll see. Right now we kind of like rely on people like making videos, talking about it, like watching people's streams and so on. They will definitely kind of help like in the future, but it's also like how much time do we want to spend implementing those metrics, because making sure like we need to know what to track, what information is going to be useful, and that's also non-trivial also, and we might not be able to spend too much time on something like that. The Bongmaster is asking, did the vague thought of having Resonite OS ever cross your mind? This has been talked about before. I don't know like what exactly it would like mean. Would it just be like a Linux distro that's optimized for Resonite? Like maybe it could be interesting. I know some people wanted to make something like that, but it's not something at the top. Next question is from Shining Hero 1. Splitting rave party when it's done, and maybe like after it stabilizes a little bit too post-release, so like I'm not like, so I can actually visit it like while not like fixing bugs. I know there's like a bunch of people who plan one, so I'm kind of excited for those. Next question is from BD_. Are you planning any kind of event post-splitting? Something like the Headless 9 benchmark party? I don't think we have like one official one right now. I know a bunch of people are gonna, run events. Probably gonna like happen something at some point, but right now no specific plans. And also thanks again for a subscription, KOBR. Another thing, the Arenaco's asking a thing, but I don't know what this is in context of. So if you're asking a question that's like a follow-up, please include the original context, because I don't know what this is about. The next question from Arenaco, are material property blocks ever gonna be removed, or are they still planned to exist forever? Oops. There's no plans to remove them. Like I don't see why would we remove them. Like essentially everything like we add, like it kinda needs to exist forever in some form, because like if it stops, then we break content that depends on it, and maybe we can convert to something else. But right now there's no plan for that for those. Next question is from BD underscore. If someone built an alternate open source Renderite protocol renderer that got you away from Unity, would you consider adopting that backend, assuming the code quality was up to your standards? And we might. It kind of depends on a lot of things, like depends like what licensing is, what feature, how is it implemented, what is it using, how can we, kind of maintain it ourselves, how can we add the features we need in the future. So there's like a lot of considerations for that. I feel it's something like, it's better like if we organize it, like, as a sort of community effort, and we kind of like give some kind of structure to it and some resources. So I think it would be kind of best way to go about it. Because I feel like, if it's just something to develop like without that, like it's much less likely to actually align with what we need. Because usually when we also develop things, they're not only developed to match the feature parity of what we have right now, they are developed to allow for future expansion, of the things we need to do in the future. But one thing I noticed is a lot of people will make things, where it just focuses just on that, just on feature parity, and completely ignores, what happens afterwards. And sometimes it leads, to making design decisions that sort of close door, to some of those future expansions. And like, even though like it would work right now, it'll not make it usable in the future and would have to be replaced by something else, just to allow for the stuff we need to do in the future. So it depends. There's a lot of factors to it. And also the raid. Oh, I already showed that one. Oops, I grabbed the camera, sorry. Granny UK is asking, Schnopit, you're late with your Schnopit, that's the Schnopit. You missed the Schnopit. Grand UK is also asking, how's the splitting work on Linux going? Sarah was working on that. Yeah, Sarah is working on that. He's kind of figured out like pretty much all the major things that need to be done to make it work on Linux. So right now the main issue is making the PRs, the code changes to actually do it like officially. So it's in progress. Hopefully like it's gonna be ready soon-ish. The next question is from the Red Nico. Nico. I sent my question about material property blocks out of order. The big one was there was a continuum was sent before initial question, but TLDR, the initial 3 texture property block were added a long while ago with no extra ones added. I was wondering if we swapped the different renders, since there never been any more of the powerful ones added texture color, would it just convert back to regular material if said render doesn't have material property block support? I don't think that's likely, because like the point of material property blocks is they allow for very efficient, like, rendering a lot of things that share the same base material, but like, vary like one of the few parameters. And oftentimes, like, that's done is like, like it needs shader support. The shader needs to be made so for a certain property, instead of like, that just being singular property, it actually accesses it from an array. And that like makes it like super efficient. And like, even though like, different renders might not have exactly like material blocks, the same principle still applies, where you have a shader which accesses certain properties from an array, like, that's kind of pre-filled, in a lot more efficient manner than like, just having separate material that copies all of the properties, for each one. And the whole point is like, you can use it to render stuff like bashed, and you can use it to render stuff like with instancing. So I don't think like we would remove it. Like it would like at most it would like be like at most like it would essentially get like transformed into like some alternate but compatible mechanism. But like they're like I feel like a okay like abstraction for this. So I don't see them going away. Like not like fully, like at most like transforming into like maybe something like similar, but I don't think they'll go away. That would actually make like all of the rendering like very inefficient. Grandic is asking, did you know that you're long-necked Froox at times? Yeah, it's one of the reasons I want to, like, you know, I want to work on the IK just to make it, like, look better and behave better. Like, it's, you know, it's making it stretchy. It's, it's one of my, like, it's one of those things I would want to work on. Like, you know, it's one of the reasons. But focus on what I can focus. Next question's from Yami DevTool. Yami DevTool's asking, how does Creator Jam Public work? Do they just get unlimited cloud storage? They don't have unlimited cloud storage. They do have quite a bit. I think they actually are one of the Patreon supporters, or like Stripe. I think I don't know if they switched to Stripe yet or no. But they do like support. They get a bunch of storage. We did like give them like some like I don't actually remember. I don't want to like say like. I think we gave them like some for like some of the stuff, because like of the stuff like they're doing for the platform, because it's like pretty much the biggest like long running thing that's like has like overall like benefit to the platform. But I don't remember details. But they also like support the platform, so they get a bunch of storage from that. And also like things sometimes like they don't take as much as you would think, but yeah. Nico's asking, I forgot what was your favorite book series. My brain dropped on accident. It was The Expanse. I do recommend like watching the video afterwards, like, you know, if you want the whole answer, because I don't want to spend time repeating it. Granny is asking, could duplicate component flux nodes be made similar to slow duplicate nodes? Is there anything inherent components that mean it's hard to do? I mean, depends what you're wanting to do. Like, you could just duplicate a component. There's like mechanisms for that, but also like, you know, components aren't the same as slots, so it kind of depends. It depends what you're doing. So like, it's like, you know, like if it's just duplicating a singular component, then that can be done. Next question's from Dusty Sprinkles. Speaking about storage being given, have you thought about bringing back doing more storage awards? We might do more in the future. Usually, like, you know, we need to figure out like what does make sense business-wise, because we don't want to, like, you know, end up like losing like money on things like overall, because if we like end up like doing that too much, that hurts our ability to like run the project and, you know, pay the people on the team and pay for the servers. So it depends, but like it's not off the table. The Renko is asking, also on metrics, I'd love to see the split on headset usage. Honestly, feel it's like 90% meta index on here. I don't really know, we don't have like those metrics, but you can look at the statistics that Valve gets, because they do collect a bunch of stuff, and they are pretty representative. I don't know how is it like, you know, on the Resonite. Kirby asking, with the splitting, would it be possible for Resonite to process next frame update while Unity is still rendering the current one? That already kind of happens. Like Unity, like what Unity does, like when it renders, it actually like generates a bunch of jobs, and then like will run stuff like earlier. But also like it's a little bit tricky to do fully, because like to start the next frame, you need to like, you know, get stuff like, for example, inputs. You know, to like, you know, new user's position, like whatever like is being pressed, and it also comes from Unity. So, you know, you can't really do that without like finishing a bunch of the work for the frame. But there's like some stuff that's parallel. Like once like the stuff is like submitted, and like Unity does like some stuff that's like being rendered, and it's also like processing some of the stuff. So like there's some pipelining. But ultimately, like, you know, you cannot do it fully. It's also like the other part is like, you know, if you just do it, because the question is at what point do you stop? Let me actually grab my brush, because I can draw like a little timeline to demonstrate the issue. Where is it? Where's the brush? Tools. There's like, because there's like one major problem also with that, which is like if you do that, you let's see. Where's the brush? I'm blind. Oh, there it is. Is this gonna be visible? This might be poor contrast with this world. Let me try a different one. Maybe the blue one? Is this visible? Oh, it's kind of visible. Yeah, I think that's okay. So imagine like, like your timeline. So imagine like, have a timeline, you're kind of like, you're rendering a frame, and say this is a Resonite update, Resonite happens, and then Unity starts rendering a frame, and say like it takes this long to render a frame. If you just start the new frame right away, you might, finish the frame before Unity is even done, and what do? Now this has to wait, this has to be rendered here. And now you start like, doing another frame, but this one, Unity is rendering, so this will need to go here. And now you start another frame, and now and the longer you go, the more behind you get, and the more memory just gets accumulated, for all these frames. So like, you can't do it like, you cannot just keep generating frames from the engine and then submitting to Unity, because if the Unity is taking, too long, now it's you essentially end up with frame accumulation, and you keep lagging more and more behind, and you increase the latency. So let's consider a scenario where it doesn't take Unity that long. Say Froox engine takes frame to compute, and then Unity starts rendering the frame, and then Froox engine does another frame. This is a much better kind of scenario, because it can start doing stuff, but it has another problem, which is then when you see this frame, this is the point where you see this frame, the latency is actually higher, or potentially higher than from it being presented, than if it was done this way. Because this way you get fresher data. But this, what we're seeing here, this is already kind of a little bit what happens, because it is pipelined a bit. The thing is it kind of has to wait for it. So if you had it with the other scenario, say, so this is Froox engine updates the frame, and then Unity takes a while to render. You might start maybe Unity is doing the rendering, but once it kind of processed enough stuff, it can start another frame while it's still finishing the render, so it does the compute. So there's a little bit of an overlap between them, and it kind of helps it makes things a little bit better. But it is a tricky issue, because you want these to be somewhat in sync, because in order to begin a new frame, you need data from Unity, and the data might only be available here for whatever input you get. So there's a tricky issue. You don't want to do some pipelining, but there's a limit on how much you can actually do it. Next question is from Kaibioru. Granduk is asking, Joe question, are you in favor of creating the Torment Nexus? No, not. Actually, I'm surprised nobody has made it as a joke world, where they created the Torment Nexus from the book Don't Create the Torment Nexus. Somebody should make the Torment Nexus on here. Make it happen. Ace on Twitch is asking, which current splitting or implementation tasks do you see being the most complex to do? Let me actually look at the list again, so I see what's on there. The splitting. So I posted the link earlier. If you're interested, or if you missed, I'm just gonna post it again. So this is the board I'm looking at, where you can see all the splitting tasks. So there's a bunch, there's Gaussian splats, those should be relatively quick, desktop texture is gonna be quick-ish, Blitto display should be quick, all the groups shouldn't be too long, transform the material override, I don't think it's gonna, so maybe render transform material override if I end up like reworking how it works. I'm probably gonna just like repeat the implementation, but because then I can use like bits of it, but I might need to, like, depending on what kind of issues we get, it might need to change a bit. Game pass, fine, touchpad, fine. And then the video texture support, that's, I would say probably that one's gonna be the most complex one of the ones that are remaining, because there's like a few things with videos. That's kind of like a bit special. One of them is they kind of need to sync up the time, so like the system needs to proxy the current playback time in a way like, it's able to handle like, all the timing differences between the processes, and also it needs to proxy back the audio. And there's like a few approaches that I'm thinking of taking with it. I'm not sure which one yet. One of the approaches could be, literally just there's a fixed buffer. There's an event that gets pushed to the render, it fills the audio buffers, and then proxies event back, but that requires, control to go from one process to another, which like might not be fast enough. The other approach is that the render is literally just gonna just gonna be shared memory buffer, and the render is just gonna be like the moment it gets audio data, it just pushes it in as fast as it can. The other side is also gonna be just reading the data as fast as it can. So like it's gonna be trying to just pump the data, like the audio data, as fast, as possible. But it also requires, managing shared memory buffers for every single video that's loaded in the scene. So there's like, complexities with that, and it's doable. It's just like, requires a bit of work. So I think that one's probably gonna be the biggest one out of the remaining ones, and I've been kind of like saving it for later. Also, the implementation of VR support, I don't think that one's going to be a big one. That's just proxying a bunch of data, but there's a bunch of data to proxy, so it just might take a bit of time to make models for all of them and write code to proxy all of them. But I don't think that one's going to be as big. Like the videos, I think the videos are going to be like the biggest one. Next question's from Ozzy. Ozzy's asking, I recently realized we can mess with the GC settings on the user end in the pre-release, and there is open issue you made about it too. For what GC settings would need tuning? What could be adjusted to improve Resonite insisting workflow when it comes to both playing and creating things? I mean, that's kind of point of the issue is like, be like mess with it and like see how do things feel with each of the settings? How does it behave? What is the performance like? Right now, I don't know, but that's why the issue is there. So I remember that like this needs to be messed with, and we need to figure out like, should it be tuned? Are there like settings that like behave better? So answering that question, that's part of like why the issue exists. There, Nico. Oh, also you're being an awesome Mr. Froox. Oh, thank you. Orphan. Bye. Next question, I'm just checking on time. We've got about 15 minutes left, so depending on how many more questions there are, like, I think I should be able to get through all of these, but if there's like any long-winded questions, I might not be able to answer them, but feel free to still ask them. If I don't get to them, we'll punt them, like, for the next one. Next question's from There's Majir. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce it. How do I convince my friends from competing platforms to all make the move to Resonite? So maybe like at this point I would just wait for the splitting to be done, like, and use that as an excuse. And one of the ways I've seen people do it is they sort of organize like, field trips. It's like, like you go as a group, you explore, you mess around, you make like a whole like fun event out of it. And we just make it like, it's almost like, going on a field trip to a different city for a bit, like, where things are going to be different and unknown and unfamiliar, but you're like, exploring and seeing things. So And going as a group, like, I feel it kind of makes it a lot more fun too, so that could be a good way. I know there's actually people on here who don't really, play competing platforms, but they also organized field trips, where they just have a whole fun event, and then they will, kind of talk about it and, share things. So that could be a potentially interesting approach. Next question. Oh no, it's a huge question. Make it huge. Red Nico's asking, I'll move my chat. A huge question: if someone somehow manages to get different render that runs better up, that's more how the question. Which priority with how we are with Unity post splitting? Would you consider using it all as your code was made? That's literally the same question that was asked earlier. Just watch the clip. We don't have too much time, so I don't want to in general I don't want to repeat things. Just to give more space for the other questions, because you can always rewind or watch the recording of this. Next question is from Koshout Wu. Maybe a newbie question. Is there a way to see where all your core storage is in? Something like Wistery. So there's a command you can send. It's not super user-friendly right now, unfortunately, but there's a command where you can request usage JSON, and it gives you a JSON file, and there's a community-made tool where you can load it up, and it actually shows you a graph of all your assets and where a lot of them are kind of allocated. We also make kind of some tools that make it easier, just by default, to see this is how much storage is being taken by different things, but that's yet to be implemented. So next question is from BD_. How difficult would it be? How difficult will the Eldritch procedural texture to be implemented in .NET 6.6.6? You see, the Eldritch texture, it doesn't get implemented; it just manifests itself. Oh, there's a cloud right here. Oh, that's my hair. There's a cloud here. Just flew by. Next question is from Grand UK. At what point in the splitting pre-release testing would VR support be added? Once I get to it, I've been kind of working on things depending on the energy level and what's kind of quickest to do in some cases. Because sometimes I don't have I'm kind of tired, so I work on the more lower hanging fruit issues. Right now I'm kind of focusing more on the stuff bug fixing, making sure it's kind of stable, because it kind of makes it a little bit, it discovers it helps discover some of the bugs, so I can make sure that when I'm implementing more things, those bugs don't end up being put into those as well. Because some of them are bugs with how fundamental things are kind of proxied, and some of the issues there, which is one of the reasons I wanted to start testing early. So I don't know yet, I'll see. I kind of want to try it on VR soon, but also I usually prioritize things on combination of factors, and one of them is energy level, another one is what I feel is going to be most beneficial right now for the testing purposes. So it's more what is most efficient. Ozzy's asking, how do you feel if a cursor with the knowledge that everyone's hips, including yours, are not smooth in full body currently? Yeah, I think there's some issues with it, but I haven't looked into it. Grinnik is asking, where's this tool? I don't know the context of that. If you're asking questions, please include context. Next question's from Derek Nico. Answer with yes, no, or maybe, as you will have looked into it more, but since you are making proxy system for syncing up the audio and video of videos, could it possibly lead to using the pane that is higher quality YouTube videos? Last I heard, anything above 360p had audio videos put into 2 files in container file. No, that's unrelated to that. That has to do with the video playback engine. The stuff I need to do for the video playback is taking the audio from the playback engine and proxying to the main process, so it can actually mix it and play it back, and it's completely separate thing, unfortunately. Check the Fox Otter is asking, is there anything that surprised you while working on the splitting? Like some system working much better than expected, or indirect interaction performance gain you didn't expect? I'll say the loading process is one. Like, I mean, I kind of knew it's going to be better because, like, I kind of changed the architecture of it. Because it actually kind of goes, you know, with, like, was talking about earlier, with, like, you know, the timelining and pipelining of stuff. When Froox engine is running its updates, Unity, like before, Unity was the one, you know, running the updates. I just still have my brush. I deleted the brush, I think. Fortunately, I still have the folder open. So, you know, you have the timeline, and what happens is, you know, what happened before is Froox, like, everything was running in Unity. So Unity wouldn't run Froox engine updates, and then it would actually run asset updates, and then it would render a new frame. And, you know, and then and at that point, where's this? There we go. And at that point, you got a new frame, and then it would start the whole process again. And these things, like, you know, happened in sequence. What happens now, because they're actually separate processes, is Froox engine is running, you know, its updates, and while it's doing that, Unity is actually running asset uploads for the whole time, and then when it gets the frame, it just, you know, integrates that frame and then renders the frame. And the Froox engine is actually also doing stuff, you know, anything that doesn't, like, involve the renderer, and then it, like, waits until Unity is, like, ready that it has a new frame, and then Froox engine starts doing new frame, while Unity is doing more asset uploads the whole time, instead of just, you know, idling and doing nothing. And then, like, you know, Unity again, like, integrates the frame, renders the frame, you know, and it just kind of continues this kind of cycle. So I knew, like, that's going to be efficient, but just by how much more efficient, I didn't expect, you know, that kind of a difference. So that was, like, very happy with. And what's even cooler is Godly, he's actually looked into this, and it seems it's not even using HTTP 2 or 3 yet. It's still using HTTP 1. So, and he's made part that, like, still need to kind of sort out, but it's probably going to be merged soon, probably tomorrow, where he actually makes it use HTTP 2 or HTTP 3 for the cloud communication and for asset downloads, and that should help even more with the download speeds, like when you're loading worlds, especially if you're, like, further away and have, like, higher latency. So there's even more performance gains to be gained. Oops, I'm grabbing the brush. I'm gonna keep it around. Next question. Next question's from Grande K, the storage tool, that's what I'm looking for. Oh, that's, I don't remember the name of it. It was, like, one that Earthmark made, so I don't remember the name of it, unfortunately. Like, you would have to search Earthmark's, like, repository. Oh. I don't know what this is about. It's, like, some chat, like, happening. If you're, like, just talking to somebody in chat, like, please don't include, like, the question mark, because I don't know, like, what it is about. Next question, also just checking time. We've got about 6 minutes left. Ozzy is asking a bit strange question, explaining the splitting and all the details with it is really neat to someone not in the know. Have you had anyone be completely surprised and Resonite is planning and currently doing that? I've heard some Resonite people be like, you know, are we the first, like, to do this kind of architecture, especially, like, you know, for a game. And I've heard, like, some people suggest that, like, we should maybe publish, like, a white paper on it, like, you know, or, like, some article or something, because, like, it's I do think it's very, like, unique. We're definitely not first to, like, in software to this kind of architecture. It's actually inspired by web browsers, because it was Google Chrome who first pioneered this architecture for web browsers, and Firefox then kind of followed. And I've actually read, like, you know, a lot of how they did things, you know, to kind of, like, get better understanding, like, you know, with, like, the philosophy and, like, kind of design of things. So we're definitely not the first, like, in general, but I think we might be the, like, I'm pretty confident we're the first social VR platform to do this kind of architecture. So some people were kind of like, you know, surprised like by the technical complexity of doing something like that and the fact that like it works. And I think like we might be like, you know, maybe we're the first game to do it. I don't know if there's like any other that like use this architecture, but I do think it's pretty like unique. And like, you know, some people were kind of like, you know, surprised, like, you know, by that fact. And I'd be kind of curious, like, you know, what people in game development community like think about this too. So also, in the case TyponX, you also late. Somebody asked it already, so you get nothing. Kai Beer is asking, how's the feedback on splitting pre-release? Are people happy with performance? I mean, it seems so to me. Like, people seem to be quite happy with it. Like, people have been, like, when it released, like, people are just loading worlds and being like, oh my god, getting so many FPS, like, in these worlds. I've seen, like, some people get, like, really huge jumps. I've actually seen some of the Japanese community also, like, they run, like, events, and they run, like, this, like, you know, car thing, like, where they're, like, racing around the map. So it's like, you know, like, and they've gotten like much better performance. Like they were saying, it's like much lighter. So like, it seems generally people are quite happy so far. So fingers crossed. I haven't like heard like too many complaints. Next question is from Zekmarus. How much of a headache would it be to make Protoflex updates around multi-threaded? So there's a problem. Like, making Protoflex in theory run multi-threaded, it's easy. You just run in multi-threaded. The problem is that the code that the people make with it is not necessarily designed to be multi-threaded. So if you have like, you know, stuff like where you have a bunch of Protoflex that's modifying some things and you have Protoflex that's modifying the same things, if you run it multi-threaded, now you get race conditions and it breaks. So ultimately, like, multi-threading, it depends on the code you make with it, because Protoflex, you know, it's a language, and we can add features, and we will actually eventually add features to allow you make multi-threaded code, but you still have to make multi-threaded code. You cannot, you know, this is not even specific to Protoflex. You know, in general, you cannot take single-threaded code and just run it in multi-threaded and just expect it to work without issues. Most of the time, that's gonna, like, you know, end up like in corruption and like really weird things. So, it depends largely on the code you run. So like the better kind of like way to think about it is like, you know, how much is it gonna be to like add multi-threaded, like, you know, primitives for doing multi-threading with Protoflex, and doing it in a way that you don't end up like, you know, shooting yourself in the foot, which is like pretty easy to do with multi-threading. Okay, found the tool. I'm not so sure I might not have time because it's like 2 minutes. Ascent, which is asking, what are your thoughts on HS's iterations of legacy badges? He's been doing some cool work, like I really like the latest iterations of the Froox badges. LC is also asking, honestly curious, have you found a strange frame rate increase after closing complex or pre-release? Really wondering why that caused. It's kind of funny, interesting. I haven't had a chance to look into that one yet. I had a suspicion, but like it wasn't correct. So, and I haven't like really dug into it yet. So I'm kind of spinning through issues. Like we have like a minute left, so we probably won't get like very complex answers. So I might recommend bringing them to the next one if you want more detailed answer. However, I think a recent Oblivion remaster does this architecture. It's OG game and plus Unreal Engine for rendering. I think it's a bit different because like the specific architecture with us is like running them as two separate processes. I don't know if Oblivion. I think they embed the engine, you know, within Unreal, so it's not running as a separate process, it's just, you know, running within, but I haven't like looked into it. Oops, I keep grabbing this thing. I want to grab this. And also, Commandeer guy, how much have memory bandwidth requirements changed with the splitting pre-release? We haven't really measured that, but like, it should be like, since we're using shared memory, it shouldn't really be like drastically different. I would actually say it's maybe even lower, because instead of using a bunch of like classes, we're actually filling like, raw memory buffers, which are like more memory packed and more efficient. So I would even say it's probably lower, but we don't have like numbers, and like ultimately it doesn't matter. It matters, is it faster like overall? Anyway, that's all the questions, like we're kind of at the time. So thank you very much everyone, for watching. Thank you for all your questions, and thank you, like, for supporting the platform, whether it's like, just being part of the community, building cool stuff, showing, talking about it on social media, or supporting us financially through Patreon or Stripe, because that helps, pay the bills. It allows us focus, like, on doing this full time. It lets us, keep the lights on the servers. So thank you very much. If you're supporting on Patreon, strongly recommend switching to Stripe, because even if we switch to the same tier, we get about 10% more money out of it, which helps us a lot, and we can kind of invest that money, in further development of the platform. So thank you very much for watching. I hope like you enjoyed, I hope you like enjoyed like watching this and seeing all the questions, and I'll see you with the next one. And I'm also gonna figure out if there's anybody to rate, so give me a sec. I don't see anybody streaming Resonite, unfortunately. Yeah, unfortunately there's nobody to rate, so we have to end it here. So thank you very much, and see you next week. Bye.